2026 Mackinac Policy Conference, Bob Riney.
I think those whistles are for me because I've lost some weight, but
We'll go with that.
all right, welcome everyone. First of all, welcome and thank you for being flexible. As you know, we are trying a whole bunch of new things with our agenda this year. And starting on Tuesday, since, well, frankly, you're all here anyway, we have tried that, and I think it's going to work out just great. So we've got a great, frankly, hard-hitting opening session here on Tuesday, and we'll do another welcome in the morning with our governor, Gretchen Whitmer. But Bob, let's jump right into this. Common ground. How do we find common ground while our house is on fire? And this is your theme. It's a brilliant theme. Talk to us about how you came up with it and why you came up with it.
Well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to be with all of you and open this conference with Sandy. But, you know, I was honored to be asked to chair the conference, and I did some reflection on the times that we find ourselves in. And, you know, I said to Sandy, if I'm going to chair, we're going to have a hard-hitting discussion about the state of this state that we all love. And he said, absolutely, let's do it. And I chose the theme because we're going to show you some data that shows that we're in serious trouble. And it's not serious trouble that has been happening over the last 3 years. In many cases, we're on a 25-year negative trajectory. And so this is not the happy part of the conference. This is going to be recognize and own we have a problem part of the conference. And there are solutions. There are solutions that have been tried, proven, and tested. But we're at a point where if we lose further relevancy in some of our key metrics, we're not going to be able to have the kind of conversations and have the national influence that we've had for so long. And this is coming from a natural optimist, someone that always believes that the glass is half full and that there's always a way. But you don't ever solve a problem by failing to recognize that you have one. And so that's really what this is focused on at the beginning. You know, more of this later, and we'll get into it, but prepared to get a little uncomfortable and know that that's okay. That's the first step to us finding a quest for common ground and moving forward.
Yeah, Bob, when you decided to take on the gig as conference chair, I was just delighted because, the Detroit Regional Chamber for over a year and a half now has been really focused on this House is on Fire theme. I mean, our Detroit Policy Conference, which was held earlier in the year, was focused on this. Our polling with the Glenn Gariff group has been focused on this, and we've been kind of trying to do our best to hammer away with it. And other business groups are also ringing the alarm bell. I want to, call out our friends at Business Leaders for Michigan. They're a great partner in ringing the alarm bell that we've got to find a way to do better, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, Bob, we've done so many new things with this conference, format and all that, but so much of this are your ideas. So why don't you talk about what's in store for folks today?
Well, the weather was my idea, so let's just let's just start there.
Yeah, he'll take credit for anything.
No, I think, look, I've been, shamelessly, I've been coming to this conference like many of you for a very long time, and it's an amazing conference. Everything has a shelf life. Everything has to evolve. And so I would anticipate that next year's conference will evolve based on the learnings of this year's. But we wanted to do a few things. One is we wanted to change the structure and just acknowledge that an important part of people investing to come up here is meetings within the meetings. There's a lot of important meetings that take place, and so we structured some time for those meetings so that when we have the sessions, they can be well attended like we have today. And second is the tone. Common ground does not mean all thinking alike. Far from it. Common ground is about how we reach collaboration, how we reach a point of action versus paralysis. And that's about tone. And so you're going to hear a lot of speakers that are provocative, but you're going to hear speakers that ultimately live by examples of reaching common ground, about looking for ultimately what's in the best interest of the whole versus the best interest of the part, and common purpose. And then finally, there's a lot of people that come up here that didn't grow up in leadership like a lot of us a little long in the tooth did. And they come to this conference and they're looking for something different. They're looking for connections. They're looking for relationships. They're looking for potential mentors to help them. And they're looking to have their ideas, sort of challenged, broadened in their own thinking. And the best way to do that is to create some social activities and some networking activities that allow people. I mean, who doesn't love meeting people in rotating euchre games? Come on. It's a great way to just make a connection with somebody. So we hope that you take advantage of the games. And just, a little commercial, if you do injure yourself in pickleball, wait until you get downstate for care. I have a referral for you.
So when we talk about common ground, hopefully you'll see in how Bob's team and our team really work to kind of curate the agenda. We're going to have conservative speakers, we're going to have liberal speakers, Democrats and Republicans, people who are unaffiliated, but we try to kind of not pair them, but make sure that you had the opportunity to hear people that actually get along, even though they have different perspectives. And I want to start with former Vice President Mike Pence and former Secretary Pete Buttigieg. These two gentlemen know each other well, and they get along. Now, they don't agree on political issues, at least all the time, but many of them that they do. And what we want you to do throughout this conference is just don't go to the sessions that are going to echo back what your political viewpoint is. If you're a liberal or a left-leaning person, definitely go listen to Mike Pence. I'll bet you anything he's going to say at least a handful of things that you're going to say, well, I can respect that, or I understand that, or, well, I learned something different. And the same thing, the opposite, with a Pete Buttigieg. When we think about people finding common ground, let's look at our governor and our Speaker of the House. Couldn't think of two more different personalities, two more different political perspectives, but look what they've been able to do. They collaborated, they found common ground on Selfridge Air Base, on road funding, on disaster relief, and on passing budgets on time. So listen, even though you may come from a different perspective, to something that might be insightful.
We're going to have a session that features together former U.S. Senator John Tester from Montana, a West state, and former Governor Sununu from New Hampshire, a East state, again, a Republican and a Democrat, but they've been on the road demonstrating to the country how you work together for common ground. And so listen, learn, and observe, and find the intersects of their ideas and their approaches. We're also going to have a senatorial debate. We'll have a Democratic debate between Abdul El Sayed, Mallory McMorrow, and Haley Stevens. And then we'll have a separate session with Mike Rogers because he's running unopposed as the Republican candidate. This is a really important midterm for this state, and the eyes are on Michigan. So, I hope you'll join me in listening for ideas, not complaints. And then I'm really excited about this special guest. I mean, who doesn't love Captain Dan?
Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan.
Well, it's been a while. Maybe he got promoted.
Yeah. Well, you know who was Forrest Gump in the movie. But in all seriousness, I love people that choose, after having a lot of success, to demonstrate their values in a meaningful way. And his focus on patriotism and taking care of our vets is something that he just does with incredible passion and energy. And you're not going to hear anything from him about an R or a D. You're going to hear about his desires and his hopes for America. Now let's pivot. And this PowerPoint is an important statement. We're going to tell you all the reasons we're in trouble, but this is a state worth fighting for. And I'm going to make it personal. My family, everyone's got their stories. My family migrated from Ireland to Kentucky and from Kentucky to Detroit. And I have been grateful my whole life that we landed in Michigan and I got to be a part of this amazing state. I've always loved the state for its natural resources. I've loved it for its history in innovation, its history in the Industrial Revolution, its history in music, its history in so many things. I've loved it for the amazing Great Lakes that we have, and I've loved it for the authenticity of people that are Michiganders. And we recruit people all the time from all over the country for Henry Ford Health, and the one thing they say, whether they're here 1 year, 2 years, 30 years, is they'll say, I've never been in a state that just has more down-to-earth, authentic people. Not the bless your heart people, the really authentic people. And when people ask how you're doing, they want to know. And when they say, what up, doe? I just did that so I could be cool with what up, doe? But the reality is, this is a state worth fighting for. But let's make no mistake, we're in a fight. And it's a fight that if we don't see it as a fight, we're not even going to have a chance to win.
So let's start with the base that we have to build on. And we have a lot in this great state. Some of the nation's biggest challenges, especially around affordability, are actually a great strength of our state. I mean, we have affordable, terrific housing in this state. We have an affordable and high quality of life. We have a high homeownership rate, which shows that we're building equity in our lives. And we are great when it comes to climate resiliency, energy availability, and of course, our Great Lakes water resources. We also have an innovation ecosystem that, yes, we need to do more on, but again, we're building from strength. We have 4 R1 universities in this state, an incredible advantage. Other states would kill to have that. And we have an incredible concentration of highly skilled, highly educated engineers in this state. These are all incredible innovation assets.
One challenge we have with those amazing assets is the chronic cycle of challenges with the governance models. So that's another thing that we have to think long and hard about, because there's only so much energy we can spend, and if we're spending it in cycling through dysfunctionality, well-intended, but one time after another, it seems like we rotate through universities, we're not going to prosper as a state, and we're not going to leverage the talent of these amazing universities that we're fortunate to have.
Yeah, and sticking with the innovation theme, we're 5th in the country for business-led research and development. We are 6th in the nation in business startups, and we're 12th in the nation on venture capital growth. And just a decade ago, Michigan was in the bottom 20 when it came to venture capital growth. So this is...
The foundation and the core is here.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we just talked about, this is such a great place to live. I mean, just look at where we are right now on beautiful Mackinac Island. How many places have a place like this? But the natural beauty across this state is really stunning. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And so I'm pretty much a snob when it comes to natural beauty, but this place is beautiful. And look what's happening in cities around the state, right? Look what's been happening in Grand Rapids over the last 20 years. Look what's been happening in Detroit over the last 10. Look what's happening in places like Kalamazoo, Traverse City, and others. It is a great place to be.
But as the headline said, our house is on fire. Let's take a look.
Our house is on fire, and there was a column written not just in the last couple of days. It said, we're here to pat ourselves on the back. This might be someone who hasn't been here for a while, but we're not going to do that.
So since I live in a health system, I thought I would put this in the story that I could personally relate to. Our state is an older patient. It's got good genes, but is facing some complex health issues. The challenge is that the patient's in denial. And it's getting whipsawed by one specialist telling it one diagnosis and a potential fix, and another specialist taking over care, changing its meds, and telling it that this is the approach. We need what we practice in healthcare, a multidisciplinary, coordinated team approach to solving vexing issues. The house is on fire. We have fire trucks, but they're going in opposite directions. And therein lies our challenge, and therein lies our opportunity, and therein lies our imperative.
So let's look at our medical chart that sits at the foot of our bed. Just since the year 2000, a generation, in per capita income, this state has fallen from 18th to 40th. Now, all the stats that we're going to read off date back to the year 2000, 25 years. Over that period of time, we've had Democratic governors and Republican governors. We've had Republican legislatures and Democratic legislatures. We've had trifectas of a mix of all of those three elements controlling our executive branch and our two branches in the Capitol. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a Michigan issue. And if anyone thinks that it is a Democrat issue or a Republican issue, not only is that wrong, it's also supremely unhelpful as we as a state, especially those of us in the business community, are striving hard to find common ground to reverse these numbers, because these numbers are not pretty. Let's look at the unemployment rate. 25 years ago, we were 21st in the country. Today, we're 46th. Labor force participation, we've gone from 21st to 39th.
This one is really startling when it comes to population growth. How many of you grew up with the business adage that if you're not growing, you're dying? Most of us, right? Growth is key to so much. I'll even talk about healthcare affordability. There's a lot of views right now on healthcare affordability. I haven't heard one talk about growing the population so we have a better bell-shaped curve of young people. We can work, and we will work as a healthcare industry with our partners in insurance to continue to get more efficient. But none of that will overcome the trajectory of a population getting older and older from a demographic standpoint. So if we want to talk affordability, let's connect it to population growth. We want to talk about education, let's connect it to population growth. And we've fallen to the bottom in GDP growth, 50 out of 50. Pretty sobering. So we have a we problem. And if we put it into traditional buckets so that we can feel better if we're not a part of that bucket, we're not going to solve the issue. It's just that simple. And we have fallen to the bottom in job growth. I'll give you an example of one of the challenges. It's not ill-intended. This is not about bad folks. But we suffer from a real challenge with getting businesses attracted to our region and to our state, because if you look through history, our economic development policies have whipsawed. They've changed drastically every 8 years, every 6 years, and the minute they're implemented, they're vilified by a certain group. Say what you want about that, but you know what business wants? Business wants predictability. Business wants certainty when they're making long-term investments. Contrast that to our neighbor to the south, Ohio. Ohio. That was for you, Dennis. That was for you, Dennis. Ohio. They have a 30-year economic development funding source through a liquor tax. I'm not talking about liquor tax, the answer. I'm simply saying, if you're a business and you're looking for predictability and you have a 30-year runway, where are you going to pay attention? So job growth is connected very much to our policies and, more important, sustainability of policies for a longer period of time. And we also have to get out of the scarcity mentality. We have to get some fire in our belly. Celebrating a victory if something from the east side of the state moves to the west side of the state, or the west side of the state moves to the east side of the state, that might be okay for the company, but it's a net zero-sum game for the state. We got to think much, much bigger at what we declare as victories.
So back to our medical chart. Fourth grade math, we were 10th 25 years ago. We're 34th today. Fourth grade reading, we were 16th in the year 2000. We're 44th today.
And you're all going to need Barbaritas after this. They're serving special margaritas in the cafe. But we fall into the bottom 33rd in populations with a college degree. And the reason that's important is all the research, everything. It's directly related to income achievement. It's indisputable. So we want to elevate the economic stature. We've got to elevate the importance of academics. And last but not least, we fall into the bottom 49th in student-to-school counselor ratios. So catching those kids at their vulnerable moments and making sure that they commit, they connect, and they continue. And this is another one, this is real personal. This is about our children and our grandchildren and ensuring that they have the same experience in this incredible state that we had. And then, I said last, but sorry, one more. We fall into 37th in chronic student absenteeism, and absenteeism is a really, really obviously determinant on how successful young people are going to be. And does anyone know what the number one barrier for absenteeism is by all research? Transportation. We live in the country's largest mobility enterprise ever. We have 25 mobility countries, including 3 of the biggest in the world, and they're all committed, by the way. If anyone should be able to create a role model solution for transportation, for education, it should be us.
So that's a lot of bad news, and here's some more.
We didn't say it was happy hour.
So we just walked through some of the major metrics in where Michigan is really struggling and has fallen precipitously over the last generation. But what's equally concerning is when you ask our Michiganian neighbors across the state, and we have done exactly that with our statewide polling with the Glenn Gariff Group, we asked our neighbors across the state, well, where do you think Michigan actually stands on some of these key issues? And here's some samples of what the results were. Percentage with a college degree, we just said it was 33rd. Voters think we're dead average. In fact, voters think we're about dead average in most of these critical rankings. When truth be told, we're not dead average, we're pretty much dead last. And why is this important? Because it's going to be hard to mobilize our political establishment, the people in, who work for the taxpayers, to make fundamental change if our voters aren't demanding it because they don't see the problem the way the people in this room see the problem. It's hard to solve a problem if you don't think you have one. Or if you are, an elected official, no one's asking you to solve the problem because the solutions, and there are solutions, aren't necessarily easy. And finally, since when is it okay for this state to be just average? So, we are laying out the case that the house is on fire, but we're pairing that with, well, WTF. Now, obviously, we're being a little cheeky here. House is on fire, WTF, but obviously WTF, as you just saw, stands for what's the fix? And what our strategy here is, yeah, let's not shy away from where we really stand and the kinds of challenges that we have, but as Bob said, solutions are available. So we have curated discussions throughout this entire conference focused on what's the fix, bringing people together, left and right, different perspectives, different industries, to focus on what are the solutions, what are the potential solutions that can do something important.
As we talk about WTF, I think it's important to keep in mind that some of these statistics, which can be really sobering, some of them don't have to have long runways to course correct. You're going to see examples of other states that have made rapid cycle improvements, and it ultimately starts with culture. All of us in business say, the old adage, culture eats strategy for lunch. So we have a great culture in this state, but we do have to help change the conversations that are going on at kitchen tables about what it's going to take to move forward. And that requires being frank, but also aspirational and providing people with hope. So as you go through this conference, keep these jarring statistics in your mind, but keep in mind that we collectively, with a state that we love, can make a huge impact on all of this. 15 years ago, the state of Tennessee as being an economic power wasn't even in the conversation. It wasn't in anybody's conversation. And there's examples of that. But it was will, determination, and strategy, policy strategy, that got that. Henry Ford Health, with our partners, are making a $3 billion investment in this state. And I could go around the room and look at people that are making huge investments. Ford Motor Company, I was just there and saw their new headquarters in Dearborn. Phenomenal facility. I saw Rachel White, Gardner White, Rachel Stewart, Gardner White making an incredible, investment in all different areas. And I could go on and on and on. I mean, there's a lot of us that are placing big bets, but we have to collectively get the enterprise to not nostalgically look in the rearview mirror, but get focused and exciting about looking in the front mirror. And I think that there's a lot of talk about purple states, and we're one of only 3 purple states. I've always actually liked the fact that we're a purple state because it provides, you can't phone anything in. You got to be, really, really on your toes because you have such division of how ideology goes. But right now, we're not wearing the color purple very well. These stats clearly show that to be a challenge, and we have to find a way to overcome that as well.
And if you forget those stats, you can go to a new website that the Chamber has created called, thehousesonfire.com, and all these numbers reside there. And when we think about what's the fix, what's super important is what's the fix long term that can be a strategy that will stand the test of time between Democrat or Republican control of any particular body. Because the Michigan U shouldn't be just the Michigan U is more than just a traffic pattern here in our state. It's actually our policy prescription. We do something for a while, and then we flip around and we do something else. And that is no way to run a state.
So as you leave these 3 days, remember one thing. This is a state worth fighting for, and it's a state worth winning.
And finally, to help us with what's the fix, we are delighted that our dear friend Devin Scillian is back at the conference. He has been so instrumental in helping us curate many of these what's the fix discussions, and I'm delighted that Devin Scillian is going to be on this stage in just a minute. Thanks so much, folks. We'll see you soon.
The next session